Hello, everybody. This is Menopause Taylor bringing you the state of menopause in the world today. And today we're going to talk about what happens socially at menopause. I've been giving you all of these broadcasts on the WHAM series, WHAM, what happens at menopause. And today we're going to talk about what happens socially at menopause. And this is a very interesting topic at this particular time because at this particular time, the coronavirus is taking over the world and people are being very antisocial by force. So the timing is really kind of apropos. But, I actually feel like we are having a real social interaction, even though I'm just talking on a radio and you're wherever you are. I feel like I know you and I feel like we can kind of see each other and I feel connected to you socially. And it just so happens that that's perfect for the fact that we're talking about what happens socially at menopause. And this is the last broadcast on the WHAM series of what happens at menopause. You've already learned that menopause involves all kinds of things, physically, emotionally, and socially. It's just like puberty. Don't you remember when your social life changed at puberty? Before puberty, you loved being with your parents. You thought they were cool. But when puberty hit, you thought they were creepy. Suddenly, they embarrassed you. Did you ever ask your parents to drop you off a block away from where you were going or to refrain from kissing you at school? Most of us did. Suddenly, you didn't even want to be seen with your parents, and spending time with your friends became more important than spending time with your family. There was a shift in your social needs. Well, guess what? It happens again at menopause, but the reasons and the circumstances are quite different. And because this podcast is all about what happens socially at menopause, it really kind of makes you think about how similar all these things are. This podcast is important because it could save your relationships. So often women have no idea why their social interests change at menopause, and not understanding what's going on hurts their relationships. Parents often talk about spending time with their children while their kids still like them. They know that puberty will change all that. They know not to take it personally when their tween finds them embarrassing. But with menopause, when you start behaving in a way that is entirely logical for menopause, nobody knows why. It shouldn't be that way. You need to know what to expect. Your friends and relatives need to know what to expect. And if you all know what to expect, your relationships will stay intact. So you really ought to be sure that everyone you know listens to this podcast or goes to YouTube and watches my video or does something to get this education about what happens socially at menopause. Back in an earlier broadcast, I brought you what shrinks at menopause, and at that time, I briefly mentioned a hormone called oxytocin. And I'm going to talk about it again today, because all the stuff that happens socially at menopause is due to oxytocin. Okay, so let's start at the beginning. You know that menopause is a process in which all of your sex hormones decrease. First progesterone, second estrogen, and third testosterone. Progesterone is responsible for your ability to nurture a pregnancy. Estrogen is responsible for your female characteristics and your well-being. Testosterone is partly responsible for your sex drive. Now, when I present them that way, you realize immediately how these three hormones have a lot to do with reproduction. But your reproductive role does not begin or end with the actual act of reproduction itself. There's another hormone that creates bonds between people. It's oxytocin, and I like to call it glue. Oxytocin is glue. It induced you to fall in love with your man in the first place. And it compelled you to meet your children's needs until they were grown. So you can assign different responsibilities to all these hormones, all of which play a part in the reproductive sequence of events that keeps our species alive. If you did that, it would look like this. First, you start producing all 3 sex hormones during puberty. Estrogen, progesterone, testosterone, all of them. They all together make it possible for you to reproduce. Then, oxytocin rises, which makes you fall in love. Of course, when you fall in love, you carry out all the actions that serve to get you pregnant, don't you? And while you're pregnant, your oxytocin stays high and rises even more. Have you ever wondered why you were in love with your baby before it was born? You know, pregnant women will do just about anything for the sake of their unborn baby. Why? Because of oxytocin, the glue. And you know, there's actually no greater incentive in the world to get women to practice a healthy lifestyle than pregnancy. Pregnant women will discipline themselves for their baby's sake much more than they will for their own sakes. And when it comes time for delivery, women will endure whatever is safest for the baby. They'll tolerate pain, pushing for hours, surgery, lacerations, you name it, they'll tolerate it. That just goes to show you how truly powerful oxytocin is. And after the baby is born, your primary purpose in life is to take care of the baby. You know, I have warned many a man that his sex life is going to disappear when his wife delivers their child. And I'm always sure to tell him that it's not because she doesn't like him anymore. It's just that Mother Nature made it so that she's glued to her baby more than she is to her man. I mean, if she's interested in sex, she might forget about the baby. So Mother Nature has made sure that you have no sex drive after having a baby. And you know, when I talk about it like that to a man, it always seems to resonate with men. I mean, in men's minds, sex can make you forget about everything. So they understand. And that warning for me goes a long way in saving relationships. Well, let's see then. After that, the entire time you're raising that baby, you put the baby's needs ahead of your own. You do what the child wants to do. You take vacations to places you wouldn't go otherwise. You know, men are just great big kids. So much of what the man likes to do is also what your kids like to do. What makes one happy makes the other happy. So all that works just fine. So you just go along with the plan to make them all happy. You just have a bunch of kids on your hands. Your oxytocin, though, is the glue that induces you to do that. You put up with all their shenanigans, their disrespect, their struggles. You even tolerate the sassiness and eye-rolling that comes with puberty. Why? Because of oxytocin. There is nothing in life that will raise your awareness, change your mind, or galvanize your determination more than something that involves your child. That's Mother Nature's design for survival of the species. So oxytocin is surging through your body in massive quantities throughout your entire premenopausal life, keeping the whole family intact. Now, men have it too. They have oxytocin release as a result of just being around you and the kids, but it's never as strong as what a mom has. You know, I was watching Grey's Anatomy once. I don't watch much television. I have one television. It's in my bedroom, and I turn it on 30 minutes before I go to bed at night while I'm, unmaking my bed and getting ready for bed. I hardly even know what's on the television. I don't recognize the names of most television shows. Every time someone says, have you ever seen this? I'm like, I've never heard of it. But I like Grey's Anatomy. Now, the social lives of the characters in that series are completely make-believe. You don't have a social life during your residency, and you hardly have one after that. But I love the medicine. And my favorite character is Miranda. She's the short black woman, and I just love everything about her. And on one show, she had me rolling because she said something that was absolutely just perfect. One of the other characters asked her something about being a parent, and Miranda responded with, "You ever heard of the black lace weaver spider? It lays 50 to 100 eggs. And at a certain age, the mother taps her web and calls the eggs to her. They swarm her, stab into her with their straw-like stingers, and the mother's innards liquefy. Then they suck her up like a milkshake for their nourishment, and after that, they go on with their lives, leaving her a dead husk. That's parenting." And when she said that, I just howled, because that describes the effect of oxytocin so well. All that oxytocin is what keeps you focused on keeping your children healthy and happy at your own expense, both literally and figuratively. Of course, if you do a good job of parenting, your kids grow up and they don't need you anymore. You spend your entire adult life creating a nice nest for them, but then you launch them from your nice nest. And that's at just about the same time that you hit menopause. Shocking, isn't it? Of course, if you had children late in your reproductive life, it could well be the case that you have both menopause and puberty going on at the same time in your nest. And if that's the case, it's probably not a very nice nest. And if that's the case, I'm sorry. I'm really sorry. All I can recommend for that is therapy, meditation, prayer, tranquilizers. But at some point, your role as a doting, hovering, protective mama bear ends. And at about the same time, poof, your oxytocin disappears. When you think about it logically, it actually makes perfect sense. You just don't need the oxytocin anymore. It has served its purpose. Its purpose was to put your children ahead of yourself. It was there so that you would do anything to make them happy, even if it made you miserable. You'd do anything to protect them. You'd even die for them. And you made sure their dad was there for them too. Well, your loss of oxytocin marks the time when you're supposed to start living for yourself. It's when you stop focusing on everyone else